For over 12,000 years, the Aurelian Empire had ruled nearly half the known galaxy. Its fleets numbered in the millions. Its warships stretched for dozens of kilometers. Entire civilizations surrendered the moment Imperial scanners entered their systems. Resistance was considered impossible. Victory was inevitable. That belief ended on a quiet patrol near the edge of the void expanse. Captain Reth Varos stood on the bridge of the Imperial cruiser Judgment of Dawn, staring at the tactical display as dozens of sensor officers exchanged nervous glances. "Captain," one officer whispered, "we found something." Varos barely looked up. "Another asteroid?" "No, sir." The officer swallowed. "It doesn't match any known vessel." Silence spread across the bridge. Unknown ships simply didn't exist anymore. Every civilization in the galaxy had long since been catalogued, classified, and absorbed or destroyed. The Empire knew everything. Or so they believed. The holographic display zoomed toward a lonely red dwarf star. There was one single object. Massive. Motionless. No transponder. No recognizable power signature. No communications. Its outline looked almost impossible. Angular armor. Tower-like weapon structures. A hull nearly 30 kilometers long. It looked less like a spaceship and more like a floating fortress built for one purpose. Varos frowned. Identify the design. Running database. Thousands of comparisons flashed across the screen. None matched. After several long seconds, no known species found. The bridge became unnaturally quiet. Another officer leaned forward. "Captain, there's writing on the hull." The cameras enhanced the image. Ancient white letters stretched across black armor. "Tedious Valor." Below it, a faded emblem. A blue planet surrounded by stars. One word beneath it. "Humanity." Varos laughed. "Humans?" He turned toward his officers. "The extinct species?" Several officers nodded. History recorded that humanity had disappeared nearly 2,000 years earlier during the Collapse Wars. Most believed they had destroyed themselves. Others claimed mysterious enemies erased them. Either way, humans were gone. Every history archive agreed. "So this is an abandoned relic," Varos said. "Probably drifting for centuries." He smiled confidently. "Dispatch recovery teams." Before anyone could move, the sensor station beeped loudly. "Captain!" It just powered on. Every screen flickered. The dead ship suddenly emitted a faint blue glow. Energy readings climbed. Slowly, steadily, impossible reactor outputs began appearing across the display. 1%, 5%, 10, 20, 30. That's impossible. Our sensors are overloaded. Those energy levels exceed Imperial Titan-class reactors. Warning sirens echoed. The supposedly dead vessel rotated. Very slowly. Very deliberately. Toward them. Weapons Officer Talus looked pale. "I think it's targeting us." Varos scoffed. "One relic against an Imperial cruiser? Charge plasma batteries." So, the enormous ship continued waking. Ancient armor plates shifted. Gigantic cannon ports unfolded from within the hull. Thousands of lights illuminated simultaneously. What? Alive. Every Imperial sensor went black. What happened? No idea. We've lost targeting. Communications offline. Navigation disabled. Only the external visual cameras still functioned. On screen, the unknown Dreadnought simply floated. Not firing. Not moving. Waiting. A transmission suddenly forced its way through every Imperial frequency. The signal contained no encryption. No language barriers. Every listener heard it perfectly. A calm human voice spoke. "This region is under Terran quarantine." Another pause. Then came words that froze every soul aboard. "Imperial vessels have crossed the boundary. Leave. This is your only warning." The bridge erupted in laughter. Captain Varos smirked. "A ghost ship giving orders?" He leaned toward the communications console. "This is Captain Varos of the Aurelian Empire. You are ordered to surrender immediately. You have 10 seconds, No answer. Only silence. The unknown dreadnought disappeared. Not cloaked. Not warped. Simply gone. Sensor Officer Carroll gasped. It vanished. Impossible. Before anyone could react, the tactical display flashed crimson. Emergency alarm screamed. Captain! It just appeared behind us. Varos spun toward the rear cameras. There was. The enormous human dreadnought floated silently less than 5 kilometers behind the cruiser. No warp signature. No jump detection. No hyperspace distortion. It had crossed millions of kilometers. Instantly. For the first time in his decorated career, Captain Varos felt genuine fear. And far beyond the Imperial frontier, unknown eyes were watching. Watching the first contact. Watching history begin. Watching to see whether the Empire had just awakened the last nightmare humanity ever built. Captain Varos stared at the viewscreen, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The massive human dreadnought hung silently behind the Imperial cruiser like a predator that had already chosen its prey. It had crossed millions of kilometers without a detectable warp signature, leaving every Imperial scientist's understanding of physics in ruins. The bridge fell deathly silent. Target the enemy, Varos shouted. Within seconds, hundreds of plasma cannons rotated toward the Terran vessel. Missile bays opened, rail batteries charged, and the Judgment of Dawn prepared to unleash enough firepower to level a small moon. Fire! Brilliant blue plasma beams erupted from the cruiser, followed by hundreds of guided antimatter torpedoes. The weapons illuminated the darkness of space as they raced toward the enormous dreadnought. Every officer watched. The explosions arrived. The tactical display was consumed by a blinding sphere of white fire. Direct hits, the weapons officer announced. The bridge erupted in cheers. But the celebration lasted only 3 seconds. As the fireball faded, the human ship emerged untouched. Not a single scorch mark. Not a single damaged armor plate. The incoming plasma had simply bent around it, as though reality itself refused to let the weapons make contact. Gasps echoed through the bridge. What kind of shield is that? One officer whispered. It's not a shield, replied the chief scientist, staring at impossible readings. Our weapons never actually touched the hull. Varos clenched his fists. Impossible. Before anyone could react, every monitor flickered. The calm human voice returned. Warning acknowledged. Hostile action confirmed. Engagement authorized. The transmission ended. Nothing happened. 5 seconds. 10, 20. Every light aboard the cruiser went dark. Emergency power activated instantly, bathing the bridge in crimson light. Report. We've lost the main reactor. Backup reactor offline. Artificial gravity fluctuating. Our engines are dead. Crew members stumbled as gravity shifted unpredictably. The dreadnought still hadn't fired. At least, no one had seen it fire. The chief engineer's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, something is spreading through the ship. What do you mean? I don't know. Every system is shutting down one after another. The tactical display disappeared. Life support dropped to 70%. Weapons offline. Navigation offline. Communications offline. One by one, every critical system simply ceased to exist. It was as though an invisible hand was erasing the cruiser from reality. Suddenly, the external cameras came back online. The Terran dreadnought had not moved. It remained perfectly still, watching. Waiting. Then, one section of its enormous hull slowly opened. A single cannon emerged. It wasn't the largest weapon aboard the ship. In fact, it looked almost insignificant compared to the monstrous batteries lining the dreadnought's spine. A faint white light formed at its center. The bridge held its breath. The weapon fired. There was no explosion. No beam. No sound. Just a ripple in space itself. The ripple passed harmlessly through the Imperial cruiser. Nothing appeared damaged. Several officers looked around in confusion. Did it miss? Varos frowned. Damage report. No response. The communications officer slowly turned toward him, his face drained of color. Captain, The engineering deck. It isn't there anymore. Silence. What? Our internal scanners show empty space. Another report arrived. Cargo section has disappeared. Hangar Bay 3 is gone. 200 crew members gone. No wreckage. No explosion. No bodies. Entire sections of the cruiser had simply vanished without leaving a single atom behind. Fear spread like wildfire. One officer whispered the words everyone was thinking. It's deleting us. Varos finally understood. The weapon wasn't destroying matter. It was removing it from existence. For the first time in Imperial history, an order was given that no captain had ever spoken. Retreat. The surviving engines struggled back to life, barely producing enough thrust to turn the cruiser away. The crew watched with desperate hope as the stars shifted ahead. Then every alarm screamed at once. The navigator's voice cracked with terror. It followed us. The Dreadnought had somehow appeared ahead of them again. Without moving. Without warping. Without accelerating. It simply existed wherever it wished. The human voice returned one final time. Second warning ignored. Final judgment initiated. The enormous cannon glowed brighter than before. Captain Varos closed his eyes. Far away, deep within Imperial space, Fleet Command continued waiting for the cruiser's routine status report. It never arrived. Hours later, a rescue fleet reached the last recorded coordinates. They found only silence. No debris. No escape pods. No radiation. No wreckage. The Judgment of Dawn, one of the Empire's finest cruisers, had vanished so completely that it was as if it had never existed at all. The only thing drifting through the endless darkness was a tiny metallic plaque. It bore a single message in flawless Imperial script. The first warning has been delivered. And somewhere beyond sensor range, the lone human dreadnought silently turned toward the heart of the Empire. The disappearance of the Imperial cruiser Judgment of Dawn shook the Aurelian Empire in a way no military defeat ever had. Warships could be destroyed. Planets could be conquered. Entire civilizations could vanish. But an Imperial cruiser simply ceasing to exist, without wreckage, without distress calls, without a trace, was unprecedented. Deep within the Imperial capital, the Grand War Council convened in the Hall of Eternal Victory. Towering holograms displayed the last known transmission from Captain Varos. Again and again, the Council watched the footage of the unknown Terran dreadnought silently appearing behind the cruiser. No warp signature. No engine flare. No detectable movement. Supreme Admiral Kaler, commander of the Imperial Navy, broke the silence. One ship cannot threaten an empire. Several admirals nodded in agreement, though uneasily. The cruiser was unprepared, another admiral argued. Whatever technology the humans possess, it cannot withstand overwhelming force. A scientist hesitated before speaking. My lords, with respect, our calculations disagree. The chamber turned toward him. We estimate the unknown vessel ignored weapons equivalent to a planetary assault. It disabled an Imperial cruiser without visible effort. Kaler narrowed his eyes. You are suggesting fear? No, sir. I'm suggesting caution. The Supreme Admiral dismissed him with a wave. Prepare Task Force Titan. A hologram expanded across the chamber. 100 battleships. 300 cruisers. 800 destroyers. Thousands of support vessels. Nearly 2 million Imperial personnel. It was one of the largest fleets assembled in centuries. If humanity wishes to return, Kaler declared, they will learn why the Empire rules this galaxy. 3 days later, the massive fleet entered the void expanse. Thousands of ships formed perfect battle formations, stretching across millions of kilometers. At the center floated the flagship Imperial Dominion, a fortress nearly 60 kilometers long. Admiral Kaler stood confidently upon its bridge. Deploy reconnaissance drones. Within minutes, thousands of drones raced ahead. Seconds later, every drone vanished from the tactical display. No explosion detected, reported an officer. No debris. No transmissions. They're simply gone. Kaler frowned. Launch another wave. Again, the drones disappeared. Exactly 13 seconds after crossing the same invisible boundary. The bridge fell silent. Then the communications console activated on its own. No hacking alarms. No breach warnings. Just a calm human voice. Imperial fleet detected. Another pause. You have entered restricted Terran territory. Turn back. Admiral Kaler stepped toward the console. This region belongs to the Aurelian Empire. No human nation exists. You are trespassing. For several seconds, silence. Then came the reply. Correction. You entered our territory. The transmission ended. Every officer exchanged uneasy glances. Before anyone could speak, the fleet's long-range sensors activated. There. One officer pointed toward the tactical map. The unknown Dreadnought floated nearly 3 million kilometers away. Alone. Completely motionless. Against an armada of over 1,000 warships. Some officers laughed. One ship. That's all they have? Kaler smiled. So the ghost finally shows itself. He raised his hand. Advance. The Imperial fleet accelerated. Thousands of engines illuminated the darkness like a river of stars. Distance closed rapidly. 2 million kilometers. 1,500,000. Still, the Terran Dreadnought never moved. Never charged weapons. Never altered course. It simply waited. The closer the fleet came, the stranger the sensor readings became. Space itself appeared distorted around the human vessel. Stars behind it bent unnaturally. Time measurements fluctuated. 1 second aboard Imperial ships became 1.03 seconds, then 1.07. Then normal again. The chief scientist whispered, "It's affecting space-time." Before he could finish, every alarm aboard every Imperial vessel screamed simultaneously. Unknown contacts. Where? Everywhere. The tactical display exploded with red markers. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. Each signal matched the exact energy signature of the Terran Dreadnought. The officers stared in disbelief. Those can't all be real. Yet every sensor insisted they were. Within moments, the lone Dreadnought had become an impossible fleet of identical ships surrounding the Empire from every direction. "No, that's impossible," Kaler muttered. The weapons officer looked pale. "Our targeting computers can't identify the original." The fleet was trapped inside a sphere of phantom dreadnoughts. Every single Terran ship spoke at once. Their voices echoed across every frequency. Final warning. Leave now. Or be erased. A young commander nervously asked, "Admiral, what are your orders?" Kaler looked around the bridge. Millions of lives depended on his next command. His pride demanded battle. His instincts screamed retreat. After a long silence, he slowly raised his hand. "All ships." He never finished the sentence. Because, in the exact same instant, one battleship on the far edge of the formation blinked out of existence. No explosion. No debris. No distress signal. It was simply gone. Then another vanished. And another. And another. One by one, entire Imperial warships began disappearing into absolute nothingness. Panic spread across the fleet. And the real battle had only just begun. Panic spread through the Imperial formation. On every bridge, officers stared in horror as warships vanished one after another. No explosions. No debris fields. No emergency beacons. No escape pods. One moment, an Imperial battleship occupied its position in formation. The next, it simply wasn't there. Report. Admiral Kaler roared aboard the Imperial Dominion. The tactical officer's hands trembled over the console. "We've confirmed the loss of 14 battleships, 21 cruisers, and 63 destroyers." "Enemy fire?" "No, sir. There are no detectable weapons." Another alarm erupted. "The Iron Crown has disappeared." Flagship escort Valiant Spear, gone. The red icons on the tactical display blinked out one after another, leaving only empty space behind. For the first time in Aurelian history, An entire battle fleet was being defeated by an enemy no one could even see attacking. Deep inside the Dominion's Science Division, Chief Scientist Lauren analyzed the impossible sensor data. Magnify the vanished sector. The hologram zoomed in. His eyes widened. Stop. What is it? Another researcher asked. Lauren pointed at the data. There. A faint ripple lingered in space where a cruiser had disappeared. Not an explosion. Not warp residue. Something stranger. It looks like... He whispered. Space is folding. He ran the equations again. Then again. Every result produced the same impossible conclusion. They aren't being destroyed. They're being removed from our dimension. Silence filled the laboratory. One young scientist shook his head. That's impossible. So was a ship appearing anywhere in the galaxy without warp? Lauren looked toward the bridge. If I'm right, we're fighting a civilization that mastered space itself. Meanwhile, far beyond visual range, inside the human Dreadnought TDS Valor, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. No panic. No shouting. Only calm professionalism. The bridge was dimly lit, lined with sleek consoles and holographic displays. At its center stood Captain Elena Ward, commander of the last active Terran Dreadnought. She watched the Imperial fleet through a floating tactical map. Her executive officer, Commander Marcus Hale, spoke quietly. Enemy losses have reached 91 vessels. Captain Ward nodded. They still refuse to retreat. They believe numbers will save them. Another officer looked up from his station. Ma'am, they're charging every primary weapon. Ward sighed. Predictable. She turned toward the tactical AI. Atlas. A calm synthetic voice answered. Awaiting command. Activate phase shield. Confirmed. The TDS Valor shimmered for less than a second. Across the Imperial fleet, targeting systems immediately failed. Our weapons lost lock. Visual targeting unavailable. The ship isn't where our eyes say it is. It exists in multiple coordinates simultaneously. Confusion spread rapidly. Admiral Kaler slammed his fist onto the command console. Fire anyway. Thousands of plasma beams and antimatter missiles streaked across the battlefield. The darkness of space became a sea of blue and crimson light. The barrage was powerful enough to destroy a small planet. Every weapon struck. Nothing. The beams passed harmlessly through empty space. The missiles detonated millions of kilometers behind the Dreadnought. The Valor remained untouched. Captain Ward barely glanced at the display. Return a measured response. Commander Hale nodded. Primary weapon? No. Use graviton lances. Acknowledged. Several small ports along the Dreadnought's hull opened. Invisible pulses spread silently across space. No brilliant beams. No explosions. Nothing visible at all. The 3 Imperial cruisers abruptly folded inward. Their armored hulls compressed like paper. Within seconds, each vessel collapsed into a glowing sphere no larger than a shuttle. They disappeared. Complete silence followed. Across the battlefield, hundreds of Imperial crews froze in disbelief. One terrified officer whispered, "They crushed an entire cruiser." Without touching it. Admiral Kaler finally realized the truth. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The human ship wasn't using its strongest weapons. It was holding back. That realization chilled him more than the losses themselves. Before he could issue a retreat order, every screen aboard every surviving Imperial vessel changed. The image of a human woman appeared. She wore a dark naval uniform with the silver insignia of the old Terran fleet. Captain Elena Ward looked directly into the camera. Her voice was calm, but carried unmistakable authority. Aurelian Empire. You mistake restraint for weakness. She paused as another Imperial destroyer silently vanished behind her. We warned you twice. We have no desire for conquest. We seek only to remain undisturbed. The bridge of the Imperial Dominion was utterly silent. Ward continued. Leave now. Or the next fleet you lose. She looked straight into the camera. Will be your capital defense fleet. The transmission ended. No threats. No shouting. Just a promise. Admiral Kaler stared at the dark screen. For the first time in his legendary career, he ordered the words no Imperial commander had spoken in over 1,000 years. Signal all surviving ships. His voice was barely above a whisper. Retreat. But as the battered fleet turned toward home, no one noticed that the TDS Valor never pursued them. It simply remained motionless in the void. Watching. Waiting. As if something far greater than a single dreadnought was still hidden in the darkness beyond. The surviving ships of Task Force Titan limped back toward Imperial space. Their once perfect formation had dissolved into scattered groups of damaged vessels. Entire squadrons were missing, and every bridge carried the same heavy silence. No one celebrated survival. No one spoke of victory. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Aurelian Empire had retreated. The imperial capital. News of the defeat spread faster than any official announcement. Citizens watched emergency broadcasts as military channels repeatedly replayed the same impossible footage. Imperial battleships disappearing without explosions. Weapons passing harmlessly through the human dreadnought. Captain Elena Ward calmly warning the Empire to leave. Fear replaced confidence. Across thousands of worlds, people began asking a question the government refused to answer. If one human ship can do this, how many more are out there? Inside the Hall of Eternal Victory, Emperor Aurelius IX sat silently upon his obsidian throne. The Supreme Admirals knelt before him. Admiral Kaler lowered his head. Your Majesty, we underestimated the humans. The Emperor's piercing eyes remained fixed on the battlefield recordings. You ignored their warning. Kaler remained silent. You attacked first. No one dared answer. After a long pause, the Emperor finally spoke. I want answers. The ancient archives. Hours later, Imperial archaeologists descended into the deepest levels of the galactic historical vault. Few beings even knew this place existed. It contained records so old that most had been sealed for 10,000 years. Chief Archivist Celine carefully activated an ancient crystal database. Thousands of forgotten files appeared. Most were corrupted. One survived. Its title shocked everyone present. Project Terran Sentinel. Celine opened the file. A hologram flickered to life. An elderly alien historian appeared on the screen. His recording was over 8,000 years old. If you are seeing this, he began, then humanity has returned, or someone has awakened one of their sentinels. Everyone exchanged nervous glances. The historian continued. Do not mistake humans for a young civilization. They are among the oldest starfaring species ever recorded. A stunned silence filled the archive. But they disappeared, one officer whispered. The hologram answered as if hearing him. They did not disappear. They left. The recording displayed images of ancient Terran cities, fleets, and impossible megastructures stretching across entire solar systems. The humans discovered something beyond our understanding. They abandoned the central galaxy voluntarily. They sealed the void behind autonomous guardians. Another image appeared. A fleet of enormous dreadnoughts. Hundreds of them. Each nearly identical to the TDS Valor. Celine's face turned pale. There wasn't just one. The historian nodded. Every sentinel protects a different gateway. If one awakens, it means someone crossed a forbidden boundary. The recording ended with one final warning. If the sentinels ever begin moving together, pray your civilization has learned humility. The hologram faded. No one spoke. Aboard the TDS Valor, Captain Elena Ward stood before a massive observation window overlooking the endless void. Commander Hale approached quietly. Imperial fleet has withdrawn. Ward nodded. As expected. Do you think they'll stay away? Before she could answer, the ship's artificial intelligence spoke. Long-range sensors detect multiple hyperspace signatures. The bridge instantly became alert. Display. The holographic map expanded. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of Imperial ships were gathering at the edge of known space. Hale frowned. They're rebuilding. Ward wasn't surprised. They believe more ships will solve the problem. Atlas interrupted again. Additional signal detected. The bridge fell silent. Source. Beyond the void. Ward's expression changed for the first time. Show me. A new section of the map illuminated. Deep within the darkness beyond the quarantined region, a single green light appeared. Then another. Then another. Thousands of lights slowly awakened across the void. Every officer recognized the pattern. They weren't stars. They were engines. Ancient engines. Dormant for thousands of years. Commander Hale whispered, "They're waking up." Atlas confirmed. Identification complete. Across the bridge, a list began to scroll. TDS Vanguard, online. TDS Dominion, online. TDS Atlas, online. TDS Resolute, online. The names continued endlessly. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. Each one was another human sentinel. Captain Ward took a slow breath. They heard the Empire. Hale looked at her. "What are your orders?" Ward watched the endless lights growing brighter in the darkness. For years, her mission had been simple. Guard the border. Avoid war. Protect humanity's isolation. Now, the Sentinels were awakening on their own. That had never happened before. Atlas spoke one final time. Priority transmission received from Earth. Every officer turned toward the command display. The message contained only 6 words. Prepare the fleet. Humanity returns. Silence filled the bridge. Captain Ward slowly smiled. The galaxy had its warning. She turned toward her crew. Set course for the assembly point. Outside the viewport, the TDS Valor finally moved, not toward the Empire, but deeper into the endless void. Toward the place where thousands of human dreadnoughts were awakening for the first time in millennia. The Empire believed it had encountered a lone ghost ship. In reality, it had only knocked on the front door. Gasps echoed through the bridge. "What kind of shield is that?" one officer whispered. "It's not a shield," replied the chief scientist, staring at impossible readings. "Our weapons never actually touched the hull." Varos clenched his fists. "Impossible." Before anyone could react, every monitor flickered. The calm human voice returned. Warning acknowledged. Hostile action confirmed. Engagement authorized. The transmission ended. Nothing happened. 5 seconds. 10, 20. Every light aboard the cruiser went dark. Emergency power activated instantly, bathing the bridge in crimson light. Report. We've lost the main reactor. Backup reactor offline. Artificial gravity fluctuating. Our engines are dead. Crew members stumbled as gravity shifted unpredictably. The Dreadnought still hadn't fired. At least, no one had seen it fire. The chief engineer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, something is spreading through the ship." "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Every system is shutting down one after another." The tactical display disappeared. Life support dropped to 70%. Weapons offline. Navigation offline. Communications offline. One by one, every critical system simply ceased to exist. It was as though an invisible hand was erasing the cruiser from reality. Suddenly, the external cameras came back online. The Terran Dreadnought had not moved. It remained perfectly still, watching. Waiting. Then, one section of its enormous hull slowly opened. A single cannon emerged. It wasn't the largest weapon aboard the ship. In fact, it looked almost insignificant compared to the monstrous batteries lining the Dreadnought's spine. A faint white light formed at its center. The bridge held its breath. The weapon fired. There was no explosion. No beam. No sound. Just a ripple in space itself. The ripple passed harmlessly through the Imperial cruiser. Nothing appeared damaged. Several officers looked around in confusion. Did it miss? Varos frowned. Damage report. No response. The communications officer slowly turned toward him, his face drained of color. "Captain, the engineering deck. It isn't there anymore." Silence. "What?" "Our internal scanners show empty space." Another report arrived. Cargo section has disappeared. Hangar Bay 3 is gone. 200 crew members gone. No wreckage. No explosion. No bodies. Entire sections of the cruiser had simply vanished without leaving a single atom behind. Fear spread like wildfire. One officer whispered the words everyone was thinking. "It's deleting us." Varos finally understood. The weapon wasn't destroying matter. It was removing it from existence. For the first time in Imperial history, an order was given that no captain had ever spoken. Retreat. The surviving engines struggled back to life, barely producing enough thrust to turn the cruiser away. The crew watched with desperate hope as the stars shifted ahead. Then every alarm screamed at once. The navigator's voice cracked with terror. It followed us. The Dreadnought had somehow appeared ahead of them again. Without moving. Without warping. Without accelerating. It simply existed wherever it wished. The human voice returned one final time. Second warning ignored. Final judgment initiated. The enormous cannon glowed brighter than before. Captain Varos closed his eyes. Far away, deep within Imperial space, Fleet Command continued waiting for the cruiser's routine status report. It never arrived. Hours later, a rescue fleet reached the last recorded coordinates. They found only silence. No debris. No escape pods. No radiation. No wreckage. The Judgment of Dawn, one of the Empire's finest cruisers, had vanished so completely that it was as if it had never existed at all. The only thing drifting through the endless darkness was a tiny metallic plaque. It bore a single message in flawless Imperial script. The first warning has been delivered. And somewhere beyond sensor range, the lone human dreadnought silently turned toward the heart of the Empire. The disappearance of the Imperial cruiser Judgment of Dawn shook the Aurelian Empire in a way no military defeat ever had. Warships could be destroyed. Planets could be conquered. Entire civilizations could vanish. But an Imperial cruiser simply ceasing to exist, without wreckage, without distress calls, without a trace, was unprecedented. Deep within the Imperial capital, the Grand War Council convened in the Hall of Eternal Victory. Towering holograms displayed the last known transmission from Captain Varos. Again and again, the Council watched the footage of the unknown Terran dreadnought silently appearing behind the cruiser. No warp signature. No engine flare. No detectable movement. Supreme Admiral Kaler, commander of the Imperial Navy, broke the silence. One ship cannot threaten an empire. Several admirals nodded in agreement, though uneasily. The cruiser was unprepared, another admiral argued. Whatever technology the humans possess, it cannot withstand overwhelming force. A scientist hesitated before speaking. "My lords, with respect, our calculations disagree." The chamber turned toward him. "We estimate the unknown vessel ignored weapons equivalent to a planetary assault. It disabled an Imperial cruiser without visible effort." Kaler narrowed his eyes. "You are suggesting fear?" "No, sir. I'm suggesting caution." The Supreme Admiral dismissed him with a wave. "Prepare Task Force Titan." A hologram expanded across the chamber. 100 battleships. 300 cruisers. 800 destroyers. Thousands of support vessels. Nearly 2 million Imperial personnel. It was one of the largest fleets assembled in centuries. "If humanity wishes to return," Kaler declared, "they will learn why the Empire rules this galaxy." 3 days later, the massive fleet entered the void expanse. Thousands of ships formed perfect battle formations, stretching across millions of kilometers. At the center floated the flagship Imperial Dominion, a fortress nearly 60 kilometers long. Admiral Kaler stood confidently upon its bridge. "Deploy reconnaissance drones." Within minutes, thousands of drones raced ahead. Seconds later, every drone vanished from the tactical display. "No explosion detected," reported an officer. "No debris. No transmissions. They're simply gone." Kaler frowned. "Launch another wave." Again, the drones disappeared. Exactly 13 seconds after crossing the same invisible boundary. The Imperial Grand Armada advanced in perfect formation. More than 260,000 warships cut through the darkness like a river of fire, their engines illuminating the empty reaches beyond known space. Admiral Kaler stood on the bridge of the Imperial Dominion, watching the navigation display with growing unease. Something felt wrong. The stars ahead no longer appeared fixed. They shimmered, bending ever so slightly, as though reality itself had become unstable. "Report," Kaler ordered. The chief navigator swallowed nervously. "Long-range scanners are malfunctioning." "Explain." "They keep detecting enormous objects ahead, but every scan returns a different size." "Sensor ghosts." "I don't think so, sir." Before Kaler could respond, every console aboard the flagship flickered. A familiar face appeared on every screen. Captain Elena Ward. Her expression was more serious than ever before. "Admiral Kaler, you are approaching the quarantine core. Turn your fleet around immediately." Kaler folded his arms. "You expect me to believe another one of your stories?" Ward didn't argue. Instead, she activated a holographic recording. The bridge watched as ancient footage appeared. Thousands of human dreadnoughts surrounded a black region of space. Without warning, the darkness moved. It wasn't empty space at all. It was an eye. A single eye larger than a moon slowly opened. Then the recording ended. Silence consumed the Imperial Bridge. Ward spoke again. "That recording is over 3,000 years old. The creature is still asleep. If your fleet continues, you will wake it." The transmission ended. Kaler stared at the blank screen. Some officers exchanged frightened glances. Others laughed nervously. One commander finally spoke. "It has to be propaganda. It has to be." No one sounded convinced. Far beyond the Imperial formation, thousands of human sentinels emerged from hyperspace. The TDS Valor joined an endless wall of colossal Terran dreadnoughts stretching across millions of kilometers. Captain Ward looked through the bridge viewport. Even after years of service, the sight left her speechless. An entire civilization's hidden navy had awakened. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cross appeared via secure hologram. "Status." Commander Hale answered. "All Sentinel groups report ready. Barrier formation is complete." Cross nodded. "Remember, we are not here to destroy the Empire. We are here to keep them alive." Inside the quarantine core, something stirred. At first, it was almost impossible to notice. A tiny vibration. Then another. Across the region, dormant asteroids slowly changed course. Gravitational readings began fluctuating wildly. Atlas interrupted the silence aboard the Valor. "Warning. Subspace oscillation increasing." Captain Ward's heart sank. "It's beginning." Back aboard the Imperial Dominion, alarms suddenly erupted. "Massive gravity spike." "Source. We don't know." Entire sections of space ahead twisted like rippling water. Stars vanished. Constellations bent into impossible shapes. The fleet slowed automatically as navigation computers struggled to calculate safe routes. One destroyer disappeared. Not like the previous ships. This time, it wasn't erased. It was pulled. The vessel accelerated forward without firing its engines. Within seconds it reached impossible speed. Crew members screamed over open communications. "Help us. We can't stop. Our engines are offline." The ship crossed the invisible boundary. Its transmission ended in static. No explosion followed. Only silence. Every sensor in the Imperial fleet registered a heartbeat. What? Massive. Heartbeat. The sound echoed through every communication channel. Thump. Several officers covered their ears. Another heartbeat. Thump. The stars themselves seemed to pulse with it. Kara whispered, "What is that?" The chief scientist slowly looked up from his console. His face had turned completely white. "I don't think that's a sound. It's gravity." Deep within the darkness, a colossal shape shifted. An object larger than planets slowly unfolded. No one could determine where it began or where it ended. Atlas immediately confirmed humanity's greatest fear. Quarantine Entity 1. Biological activity detected. Status. A long pause followed. Every Terran bridge waited. Then Atlas completed the sentence. Awakening. Fleet Admiral Cross closed his eyes for a brief moment. 3,000 years of peace ended with a single Imperial mistake. He opened his command channel. Every human dreadnought instantly received the transmission. All Sentinel fleets, prepare for containment. Across the void, more than 10,000 human dreadnoughts powered their weapons simultaneously. Not to fight the Empire, but to confront an ancient horror that had once nearly driven humanity to extinction. As the first impossible silhouette emerged from the darkness, even the proud Aurelian officers finally understood. The human dreadnought had never been guarding a border. It had been guarding a prison. The heartbeat echoed across the void once more. Every sensor aboard the Imperial Grand Armada overloaded simultaneously. Warning lights flashed crimson as navigation systems failed, targeting computers rebooted endlessly, and even the Empire's quantum AIs returned the same impossible message. Error. Object size cannot be calculated. Admiral Kaler gripped the edge of the command console. Visual feed. The main view screen activated. At first, the officers saw only darkness. Then, the darkness blinked. A gigantic eye slowly opened. It reflected entire star systems across its black, mirror-like surface. Around it, space itself bent inward, twisting light into impossible spirals. Several junior officers instinctively stepped backward. One whispered, "That's not a creature." The chief scientist shook his head. "No, it is." Hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, the first wave of human sentinels moved into formation. More than 10,000 human dreadnoughts formed an enormous circular barrier around the quarantine core. Captain Elena Ward stood silently aboard the TDS Valor. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cross appeared on every bridge. His calm voice carried the weight of history. All Sentinel groups, initiate containment grid. At once, thousands of colossal ships extended massive energy spires from their hulls. Brilliant white beams erupted into space. Each beam linked with another dreadnought. Then another. Within seconds, an immense web of light surrounded the quarantine core, stretching across millions of kilometers. Commander Hale watched in awe. "I've studied the containment grid my entire career. I never believed I'd actually see it activated." Ward didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the darkness beyond the barrier. Inside the quarantine core, the enormous entity continued to awaken. Fragments of shattered moons drifted toward it as though pulled by invisible tides. Entire asteroid belts changed direction. Stars dimmed. The heartbeat grew stronger. Thump, thump. Atlas interrupted. Containment grid operating at 98.7% efficiency. A brief pause. Entity continues awakening. Ward frowned. "It remembers." Commander Hale looked confused. "What remembers?" "The barrier." She had barely finished speaking when the creature moved. Not quickly. Not violently. Just slightly. Yet that tiny motion generated a gravitational wave powerful enough to shatter nearby planets. The wave struck the containment grid. Thousands of human dreadnoughts shook violently. Warning alarms erupted. Grid integrity dropping. 96%. 94. Fleet Admiral Cross remained calm. Reinforce Sector 7. Immediately, hundreds of reserve sentinels joined the weakening section. The barrier stabilized. For the moment, meanwhile, the Imperial Grand Armada descended into chaos. Ships drifted out of formation as gravitational currents twisted space around them. One battleship suddenly accelerated sideways without activating its engines, colliding with two cruisers. Another vanished into a growing spatial fracture. No enemy weapon had fired. Reality itself had become hostile. Admiral Kaler finally accepted the truth. The humans had been telling the truth from the beginning. He opened a direct communication channel. "Captain Ward." Her image appeared instantly. Kaler lowered his head. "I was wrong." The bridge fell silent. No Imperial Admiral had uttered those words in centuries. Ward simply nodded. I know. What can we do? Leave. Our drives are failing. Then shut down every weapon. Kaler frowned. Why? Ward's answer chilled every officer aboard the flagship. Because it hunts aggression. It senses energy. The more power your fleet releases, the faster it wakes. Kaler didn't hesitate this time. Transmit to all ships. Power down all offensive systems immediately. Across the Grand Armada, thousands of cannons fell silent. Missile bays closed. Planet killer weapons deactivated. For the first time since leaving the Imperial capital, the fleet became still. The heartbeat slowed. Only slightly, but enough for every human sensor to notice. Commander Hale looked at Ward. It's responding. She nodded. Good. Then Atlas spoke again. Its usually calm voice carried an urgency no one had ever heard before. Additional biological signatures detected. The bridge froze. Fleet Admiral Cross looked toward the tactical map. Another light appeared deep inside the void. Then another. Then dozens. Then hundreds. The room fell completely silent. Captain Ward whispered, "No." The first entity had not awakened alone. Every officer stared in horror as more enormous life signs appeared beneath the darkness. The devourer they had been containing for 3,000 years was only one of many. Fleet Admiral Cross slowly closed his eyes before issuing the order humanity had prayed would never be necessary. Authorize Omega Protocol. Across the void, hidden beneath drifting planets and ancient shipyards, massive structures began to awaken. Weapons so large they had never been used. Weapons built not to win wars, but to hold back the end of civilizations. And somewhere, deep within the endless darkness, hundreds of ancient eyes slowly opened. The words, Omega Protocol authorized, echoed across every human warship. For 3,000 years, those words had existed only in simulations and encrypted archives. No living Terran had ever expected to hear them. Yet now, across the hidden reaches of the void, thousands of human dreadnoughts acknowledged the command simultaneously. Omega Protocol confirmed. All Sentinel fleets moving into final containment formation. Deep beneath the surface of dead planets, ancient vaults unlocked for the first time in millennia. Planet-sized blast doors slowly separated. From within emerged enormous machines that had slept since the last war against the Devourers. They weren't warships. They were stellar anchors, colossal gravitational fortresses designed to stabilize space itself. Each anchor was nearly the size of a moon, wrapped in rings of glowing white energy and powered by artificial singularities. One by one, they rose into the darkness. Anchor 1, online. Anchor 2, online. Anchor 3, online. The status reports continued until all 12 stellar anchors had awakened. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cross watched the tactical display. Begin synchronization. Brilliant beams of light connected the anchors with the Sentinel fleet, forming an immense lattice around the quarantine core. For a brief moment, the heartbeat stopped. Silence filled the void. Commander Marcus Hale let out a slow breath. Did we succeed? Before anyone answered, the heartbeat returned. Stronger, louder, more violent than before. The entire containment grid trembled. Inside the quarantine core, the first devourer was no longer hidden. Its colossal body slowly emerged from the darkness. Its surface resembled living black crystal, constantly reshaping itself into impossible geometries. Dozens of moon-sized eyes opened across its body. Each one reflected different parts of the galaxy, as if it perceived every corner of space simultaneously. The creature didn't roar. It didn't attack. It simply looked. And where its gaze fell, stars dimmed. One nearby solar system aged centuries in seconds. Planets cracked apart under impossible tidal forces. Even time itself seemed to bend around the entity. Atlas issued a grim report. Entity 1 is 42% awake. Additional entities remain dormant, for now. Captain Elena Ward clenched her fists. 42% caused this much damage. She couldn't finish the sentence. Aboard the Imperial Dominion, Admiral Kaler watched in stunned silence. His empire had spent 12,000 years believing itself invincible. Now, everything he knew seemed insignificant. He opened a secure channel to Fleet Admiral Cross. "I understand now." Cross appeared on the screen. "You guarded this place?" "Yes. And we almost destroyed the galaxy." Cross gave a slow nod. "You crossed a line that countless civilizations never knew existed." Kaler lowered his head. "Tell me how the Empire can help." For the first time since their encounter, Cross smiled faintly. "By standing with us." Orders spread through the Imperial Grand Armada. Every remaining battleship, cruiser, and destroyer abandoned combat formation. Instead, they repositioned behind the human containment grid. Imperial engineers redirected the output of thousands of fusion reactors toward the barrier. It wasn't much compared to human technology, but every unit of energy mattered. Human and Imperial ships, once enemies, now stood side by side against a threat neither could defeat alone. Captain Ward looked across the tactical display. "History won't believe this." Commander Hale smiled. "If there's anyone left to write it." Suddenly, alarms erupted across every human vessel. Atlas' voice became urgent. Omega grid destabilizing. The holographic display flashed crimson. One of the 12 stellar anchors had begun to fracture. Hairline cracks spread across its moon-sized structure. Commander Hale's eyes widened. "It can't withstand the pressure." Fleet Admiral Cross immediately issued new orders. "Divert reserve power. Seal the breach." Engineers obeyed instantly. It wasn't enough. The cracks expanded. A blinding beam of black energy erupted from the Devourer's body, striking Anchor 4. For one terrifying second, the fortress held. Then it shattered. The explosion illuminated the entire void. The containment grid dropped from 98% to 81%. A massive tear ripped through the barrier. Deep within the darkness beyond that opening, another enormous eye slowly opened. Then another. And another. Atlas delivered the report every Terran had feared for 3,000 years. Multiple Devourers beginning full awakening. Fleet Admiral Cross stared at the tactical map. Humanity had delayed the inevitable for millennia. Now, the final battle for the galaxy had truly begun. The tactical display aboard the TDS Valor glowed crimson. Across the quarantine core, the containment grid was collapsing sector by sector. The destruction of Anchor 4 had created a widening breach, and through that fracture, more colossal eyes opened within the darkness. The Devourers were awakening. Not one, not 10, hundreds. For 3,000 years, the Sentinel fleet had held them back. Now, the prison walls were breaking. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cross opened a secure channel to every human and Imperial ship. His face appeared on millions of bridges across the battlefield. There was no fear in his voice, only resolve. To every captain, every pilot, every sailor. Today, humanity does not fight for Earth. We fight for every civilization that will never know how close it came to extinction. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Then, every human crew acknowledged the order with a single response. For humanity. A heartbeat later, the Imperial fleet answered. For the galaxy. For the first time in history, two former enemies became one united force. The Devourers attacked. They did not fire weapons. They simply moved. Reality fractured around them. Entire regions of space folded inward, swallowing asteroids, moons, and abandoned satellites into endless darkness. One human dreadnought disappeared instantly. Then another. The crews never had time to send distress calls. Captain Elena Ward watched the losses mount. Her jaw tightened. Atlas, report. The AI responded immediately. Containment failure predicted in 6 minutes. Commander Marcus Hale whispered, 6 minutes. Ward looked toward the shattered barrier. Then we make those 6 minutes count. Fleet Admiral Cross activated the final safeguard hidden within Omega Protocol. Buried beneath the assembly nexus, a colossal structure began to awaken. Unlike the stellar anchors, this machine had never been activated. Not even during humanity's first war against the Devourers. Its name appeared across every human display. Project Eclipse. Atlas explained. Purpose, permanent dimensional seal. Commander Hale frowned. Permanent. The AI paused. Probability of Sentinel fleet survival. Another pause. Less than 1%. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood. Project Eclipse would seal the quarantine core forever. But every human ship inside the barrier would be trapped with the Devourers. There would be no escape. Fleet Admiral Cross opened one final broadcast. Every Sentinel captain, you may withdraw. No one will question your courage. Not a single ship moved. Across 10,000 bridges, the same reply arrived. Permission to remain denied. Cross smiled proudly. I expected nothing less. The assembly nexus unfolded. Its massive rings aligned with the center of the quarantine core. White energy surged through every remaining stellar anchor. The human dreadnoughts formed one final defensive wall while the Imperial fleet protected their flanks. Admiral Kaler stood at the bridge window of the Imperial Dominion. He saluted the human fleet. They called themselves Guardians, and we called them Ghosts. He lowered his head. We were fools. The first Devourer reached the collapsing barrier. Captain Ward gave the order. All Sentinels. Full power. Thousands of human dreadnoughts fired simultaneously. For the first time, the galaxy witnessed the true power of the Sentinel fleet. Beams brighter than stars crossed the void. Graviton lances bent reality. Singularity cannons tore open dimensions. The combined barrage forced the lead Devourer backward. Not destroyed, but delayed. Exactly as humanity intended. Atlas began the countdown. Project Eclipse charging. 30 seconds. The assembly nexus shone like a newborn sun. The surviving human crews remained at their stations. No one attempted to flee. No one hesitated. Commander Hale looked at Captain Ward. It has been an honor. Ward smiled. The honor was serving beside all of you. 10 seconds. The Devourers surged forward again. The last stellar anchors overloaded one by one. The barrier collapsed completely. Darkness poured into the battlefield. 5 seconds. The Imperial fleet fired everything it had, buying humanity a few final moments. Countless Imperial ships vanished. None turned away. 3, 2, 1. Fleet Admiral Cross whispered, "Goodbye." Project Eclipse activated. A blinding wave of white light expanded across the void. Space folded inward. Time itself seemed to stop. The quarantine core, and every Devourer within it, was sealed inside a new dimension, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Silence. 1 year later. The galaxy rebuilt. The Aurelian Empire officially dissolved its expansion doctrine and became the Galactic Alliance, dedicated to cooperation instead of conquest. At the edge of the former quarantine line, a memorial station was constructed. At its center stood a simple monument bearing the names of every known human sentinel lost during Operation Last Dawn. Admiral Kaler, now the first Chancellor of the Alliance, read the inscription aloud. They never sought to rule the galaxy. They chose to protect it. When darkness returned, humanity stood between extinction and every civilization that would never know their sacrifice. As the ceremony ended, a young explorer noticed a faint signal beyond the sealed dimension. One lonely transponder. Barely detectable. Its identification flickered across the screen. Tedious valor. Then it vanished again. Some legends, it seemed, never truly end.